Apartment 4B, the tenant who was never seen leaving on the morning of March 14, 2019, a letter carrier named David Huang approached the door of apartment 4B at 1847 North Mayer Avenue, a modest brick building in the Lincoln Park neighborhood of Chicago. It was a Thursday, overcast, with a raw wind coming off Lake Michigan. The temperature hovered just above freezing. Mr. Huang had been delivering mail to this building for 11 years. He knew the rhythms of every unit, the patterns of every resident. But on this morning, something was different. The mail for apartment 4B had accumulated for 11 days. 3 parcels, 4 letters, and a magazine had gathered in his satchel, more than usual, but not unprecedented. What caught his attention was the absence of any outgoing mail. In 11 years, the tenant of 4B had never missed a collection day. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Silence. Using his master key, he opened the door to a dark apartment, the curtains drawn, the air inside cold and still. What he found would set in motion an investigation that would confound detectives for years and leave the building's residents with a question that has never been answered. What happened to Elena Marsh? Elena Marsh was 34 years old. She had lived in apartment 4B for just over 2 years, having signed her lease in January of 2017. Neighbors described her as private, polite, unremarkable. She worked as a medical transcriptionist for a firm downtown, a job she performed from home. Her landlord, a property management company called Lincoln Residential Group, had no complaints. Rent arrived on the 1st of every month, paid electronically, never late. Her credit score was excellent. By all accounts, Elena Marsh was the ideal tenant, quiet, responsible, and utterly unremarkable. The first officer on scene was Patrolman Thomas Barrer of the Chicago Police Department's 19th District. He described the apartment as clean, almost obsessively so. The kitchen counters were bare except for a single coffee mug in the sink. The bed was made with military precision. There were no signs of struggle, no broken furniture, no blood. On the dining table sat a laptop computer, open, its screensaver active. Beside it was a half-empty glass of water and a small prescription bottle, antihistamines, prescribed to Elena Marsh 4 months prior. Nothing was out of place. But Elena Marsh was gone. Detective Sarah Okonkwo of the Chicago Police Department's Homicide Division was assigned to the case. Though there was no body, no crime scene, and no evidence of foul play, the circumstances troubled her. A woman had vanished from a locked apartment in the middle of winter, and no one had seen her leave. The investigation began with the building's other residents. There were 8 units in total, 4 on each floor. The building had no elevator, just a narrow staircase that residents used daily. Detective Okonkwo interviewed each tenant personally. The tenant directly below, apartment 3B, was a retired schoolteacher named Margaret Oyelaran. She had lived in the building for 19 years. She told detectives she occasionally heard footsteps from 4B, the creak of floorboards, the opening and closing of the front door, but she could not recall the last time she had heard either. She kept to herself, Mrs. Oyelaran said. She smiled in the hallway, that was all. The tenant across the hall, apartment 4A, was a young couple, Brian and Christine Voss. They had moved in 8 months prior. Christine recalled seeing Elena Marsh only once, in the laundry room of the basement. They exchanged a brief hello. That was all. No one had seen Elena Marsh in weeks. No one had spoken to her. No one had received a phone call from her. Her employer, MedTech Transcription Services, reported that she had submitted her last assignment on March 3rd, 11 days before the letter carrier opened her door. Her supervisor, a woman named Patricia Guo, said Elena had requested no time off and gave no indication she was planning to leave. Detective Okonkwo pulled Elena's phone records. The last incoming call was on March 2nd, from a number belonging to a grocery delivery service confirming her order. The last outgoing call was on March 3rd, to a pizza restaurant for delivery. The pizza was never picked up. The delivery driver, a 19-year-old named Kevin Suarez, told detectives he waited outside the building for 10 minutes, rang the bell, received no answer, and left. He assumed the customer had changed her mind. Elena Marsh had no known enemies. She had no criminal record. She was not involved in any romantic relationship that her family or colleagues were aware of. Her parents, who lived in Ohio, reported that they spoke to her roughly once a week by phone. The last time they heard from her was March 1st, a Friday evening. She sounded tired, they said, but fine. She mentioned she was looking forward to the spring. So where was she? The investigation took several turns. Detectives searched the apartment thoroughly, cataloging every item. They found clothing, toiletries, documentation, everything a person would need to live. Her passport was in a drawer in her bedroom. Her wallet, containing $340 in cash, sat on her dresser. She had left behind her coat, her boots, her umbrella. In the freezer, there was a bag of frozen peas and a container of ice cream, both well within their expiration dates. It was as if Elena Marsh had simply ceased to exist. Forensic teams processed the apartment for DNA, fingerprints, anything that might offer a clue. They found Elena's prints throughout the apartment and nothing else, no foreign DNA, no fibers, no evidence that anyone else had been inside. The locks showed no signs of tampering. The windows were intact. The front door, when examined by a locksmith, functioned perfectly. The deadbolt had been thrown from the inside. This was the detail that haunted Detective Okonkwo. The deadbolt, a simple mechanism operated by a thumb turn on the interior of the door, had been locked. For a tenant to leave, they would need to turn the deadbolt, open the door, and pull it shut behind them. It was possible, theoretically, to do this from outside using a thin tool, but there was no evidence anyone had attempted it. And yet Elena Marsh was not inside. She had vanished through a locked door that no one had opened. There was one final piece of evidence, discovered by a forensic analyst named Dr. Amelia Singh during a routine review of the case file 3 months later. It was the laptop. The screensaver was still active, but Dr. Singh was able to bypass it using a recovery tool. She found a single open browser tab, Elena's email account, left logged in. The inbox was empty, all messages deleted. But in the trash folder there was a draft email, unsent, dated March 4th at 2:17 in the morning. The recipient line was blank. The message contained only 4 words, "I know what you are." Detective Okonkwo never determined who that message was meant for. She never identified what Elena Marsh knew or what she believed she knew. The investigation was eventually suspended due to lack of evidence. Elena Marsh was never declared dead because no body was ever found. Her case remains open, an unsolved disappearance in a city that sees too many to count. Today, apartment 4B sits empty. The property management company has been unable to rent it. Prospective tenants have reported feeling uncomfortable in the unit, though they cannot say why. The neighbors in the building have learned not to talk about it, but sometimes, late at night when the building is quiet, Mrs. Oyalaran in 3B says she still hears the creak of floorboards from above. She knows no one is there. And yet she listens, and she waits, and she wonders. What happened to Elena Marsh? What did she know? And is she still somewhere, watching, waiting to be found? The door to apartment 4B remains locked. And the deadbolt, to this day, has never been turned.